Dismissed as a quiet, mousy placeholder, she was chewed up by New York society. When Arthur Sterling discarded her 5 years ago for a senator's daughter, Viviane vanished into the rain. The entire city forgot her name. They forgot she existed. Until tonight. The Sterling Foundation. Gala is the season's biggest event, but the woman ascending those stairs isn't a victim anymore. She is a predator. Notice the boy gripping her hand. Look closely at his steel-grey eyes. That isn't just a child. That is a reckoning. Grab your popcorn because the forgotten wife has finally burned the whole script. New York City 5 years ago. The rain in Manhattan doesn't wash things clean. It just makes the grime slicker. Viviane stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the penthouse on Fifth Avenue, her forehead resting against the cold glass. Below, the city was a blur of grey and yellow taxis, but inside the air was suffocatingly dry. The room smelled of expensive leather and Arthur's cologne Santal 33. And betrayal. Just sign the papers, Viv. Don't make this uglier than it has to be. Arthur Sterling didn't even look up from his phone. He was sitting on the edge of the mahogany desk, scrolling through emails, looking devastatingly handsome in a navy Tom Ford suit. That was the thing about Arthur. He was beautiful, rich, and utterly hollow. Sitting in the wingback chair was Beatrice Montgomery, the other woman, except she wasn't hiding in the shadows anymore. She was sitting right there, sipping Viviane's favorite herbal tea from Viviane's favorite Wedgwood cup. Beatrice was the daughter of Senator Montgomery. She was blonde-polished and had a laugh that sounded like champagne bubbles popping. She was everything Viviane poor scholarship student Viviane was not. "We have a dinner reservation at Le Bernardin at 8, Arthur Beatrice said, checking her diamond-encrusted watch. She looked at Viviane with pity, which was worse than hate. "Honey, really? Take the settlement. It's generous." "Arthur is being very kind, considering you bring nothing to the table." Viviane turned around. Her hands were trembling, but she clasped them behind her back. "I'm his wife." "You were a mistake," Arthur said, finally looking up. His eyes were cold, the color of frozen steel. "I needed a quiet life for a year while the board stabilized. You were convenient. But now I need a partner. A real partner. Beatrice understands the world I live in. You just live off it." He slid the papers across the desk. "The prenup stands." Arthur continued. "You get the apartment in Queens and $50,000. But if you contest it, my lawyers, Goldman and Weiss, will drag your name through the mud. We'll invent lovers you never had. We'll say you were mentally unstable. I will ruin you, Viv." "Sign it." Viviane felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just the cruelty, it was the secret she was carrying. She had found out that morning. 2 pink lines on a plastic stick wrapped in a tissue in her pocket. She was pregnant. She looked at Arthur. If she told him now, everything would change. He wouldn't love her, but he would keep her. He was obsessed with the Sterling legacy. He would lock her in a gilded cage, take the baby the moment it was born, and hand it to Beatrice to raise. She would be a broodmare, nothing more. She looked at Beatrice, who was smirking already, mentally redecorating the penthouse. Viviane walked to the desk. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She picked up the heavy Montblanc pen. "I have one condition," Viviane said, her voice barely a whisper. Arthur raised an eyebrow. "You're in no position to negotiate. I want my maiden name back. Immediately. And I want you to promise you will never look for me. If I sign this, I cease to exist for you." "Totally." Arthur laughed, a dry, barking sound. "Done. I was planning on forgetting you by dessert anyway." Viviane signed. Viviane Cross. She put the pen down. She didn't take the check for the $50,000. She left her wedding ring on the desk. It made a hollow clink sound against the wood. "Goodbye, Arthur," she said. "Don't forget your umbrella," Beatrice called out cheerfully. Viviane walked out of the heavy oak doors, down the silent elevator, and out into the pouring rain. She had no money, no husband, and no home. But as she stepped onto the wet pavement, she pressed a hand to her stomach. "It's just us, little one," she whispered to the rain. "And I promise you when we come back, they won't be laughing." Present day. The Hamptons. The Sterling Foundation Gala was not just a party, it was a blood sport, held at the Sterling's massive estate in the Hamptons. It was where political alliances were forged, mergers were whispered about, and social statuses were executed. Arthur Sterling stood at the top of the grand staircase, holding a scotch. He looked older. The 5 years hadn't been kind. The stress of the merger with the Asian markets was showing in the grey at his temples. Beside him, Beatrice was manic. She was wearing a silver Givenchy gown that cost more than most people's houses, but she looked unhappy. "Is the governor here yet?" she hissed. "Arthur, stop drinking. We need to secure the zoning permits tonight, or the new stadium project is dead." "He's late," Arthur grunted. "Relax, Bea. You're shrill when you're stressed." Beatrice glared at him. Their marriage had curdled 3 years ago. It turned out that 2 narcissists didn't make a power couple. They made a war zone. They stayed together for the cameras and the stock price, but they slept in separate wings of the mansion. Worse, Beatrice had never given him an heir. They had tried IVF surrogates, everything. It was the one thing Arthur held over her head. Mr. Sterling, a flustered assistant. Timothy ran up the stairs, clutching an iPad. "Not now," Timothy Arthur snapped. "Sir, you need to see the guest list. There's been a last-minute addition, a platinum donor." Arthur frowned. Platinum donors were rare. That was a $10 million buy-in. "Who is it, Musk Bezos?" "No, sir. It's the CEO of Etheria." Arthur froze. Etheria. The tech company that had come out of nowhere 2 years ago. They specialized in AI-driven sustainable energy and high-end biotech. They were currently buying up real estate in New York, faster than Sterling Industries could. No one knew who the CEO was. The company was shrouded in secrecy run through shell corporations in Zurich and Singapore. "The ghost CEO is coming here." Arthur straightened his tie. "This is huge. If we can get Etheria to partner on the stadium..." "There's something else," Sir Timothy stammered. "The name on the security clearance. It's... well, you should see." Arthur waved him off. "I don't care about the name, I care about the check. Make sure the red carpet is clear. I want them treated like royalty." Down at the entrance, the paparazzi were bored. They had photographed the same socialites, the same fake smiles. Then a car turned onto the long driveway. It wasn't a limo. It was a matte black Koenigsegg Gemera, a car worth nearly $2 million. It moved like a shark through water, silent and deadly. The chatter stopped. The paparazzi raised their cameras. The car stopped at the foot of the red carpet. The driver, A mountain of a man with a distinct military bearing stepped out and opened the rear door. First, a pair of heels hit the carpet. Not silver, not gold. Red. Blood red. The woman who stepped out was wearing a custom crimson gown that defied gravity, structured yet flowing, highlighting a figure that was strong, athletic, and undeniably feminine. Her hair, once mousy brown and limp, was now a rich, dark chocolate, styled in loose, glamorous waves. Her face was striking high cheekbones, confident red lips, and eyes that burned with intelligence. A hush fell over the crowd. "Who is that?" someone whispered. "Is that a movie star?" "Wait. She looks familiar." She didn't look at the cameras. She turned back to the car and extended her hand. "Come on, Noah. Head up." Just like we practiced. A small boy about 4 years old hopped out of the car. He was wearing a miniature tuxedo tailored to perfection. He had messy dark hair and a shy smile, but it was his face that made the older photographers gasp. He had the sterling jawline. He had the sterling nose. And he had Arthur Sterling's steel grey eyes. The woman stood tall, gripping the boy's hand. She looked up at the balcony where Arthur and Beatrice were standing. She smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was Viviane. The silence was heavy, physical. It pressed down on the lawn of the Hamptons estate like a lead blanket. Arthur, standing on the balcony, dropped his glass. It shattered on the stone railing shards, raining down into the bushes below. But no one noticed the sound. Arthur felt like he had been punched in the throat. He squinted, trying to make the image fit the memory. The mouse. The girl who wore oversized cardigans to hide her figure. The girl who stuttered when he raised his voice. This woman didn't stutter. She walked up the red carpet with the grace of a panther. "Oh my God," Beatrice whispered, her hand flying to her throat. "Is that the ex?" The charity case. The reporters were starting to realize it too. Is that Viviane Sterling? No, she disappeared years ago. Look at the kid. Look at the kid. Viviane stopped at the top of the carpet, where the press line was thickest. She knew exactly what she was doing. She turned to the lead reporter for Vanity Fair, a man named Julian, who she knew Arthur feared. "Ms. Cross." Julian shouted, abandoning decorum. "Ms. Cross, is it true? Are you the founder of Etheria?" Vivian paused. She looked directly into the camera lens, knowing the feed was being projected onto the giant screens inside the gala hall. "Please," she said, her voice smooth, low, and terrifyingly calm. "Call me Ms. Cross. I haven't been a Sterling for a long time. And yes, Etheria is mine. Flash, flash, flash," and the child, Julian asked, gesturing to the boy who was looking at the lights with curiosity rather than fear. "Who is the father?" Viviane looked down at Noah. She smoothed his hair. "Noah is my son. He is his own man." She looked back at the camera. "We aren't here to discuss biology. We're here to discuss business. I hear Sterling Industries is in trouble. I thought I'd come observe." She walked past the press, sweeping into the main hall. Inside, the reaction was even more visceral. The room filled with New York's elite people who had ignored her, mocked her, and looked through her 5 years ago, parted like the Red Sea. Dominic Reed, a powerful venture capitalist, and Viviane's closest ally. And perhaps more, though the tabloids could never prove it, met her at the entrance. He offered her his arm. "You're late," Dominic whispered, a smirk playing on his lips. "Arthur looks like he's having a stroke." "Good." Vivian replied, keeping her smile fixed for the room. How is Noah doing? He's a champ. He knows the drill. Auntie Sarah is waiting by the chocolate fountain to keep an eye on him while you work the room. Vivian bent down to Noah. Go with Uncle Dom and Sarah. Okay, Mummy. Has to go say hello to some old ghosts. Okay, Mummy. Can I have a slider? Noah asked, his voice the only innocent thing in the room. You can have 2. As Dominic led Noah away, Vivian stood alone in the center of the ballroom. She took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. She didn't drink it. She just held it like a weapon. She felt a presence behind her. The temperature seemed to drop. Vivian. She turned slowly. Arthur was standing there. He was breathless, his face pale, his eyes darting frantically from her face to the direction where Noah had disappeared. Arthur, she said. You look tired. The boy Arthur choked out. How old is he? He's 4. Arthur. Arthur did the math. The color drained from his face completely. 4. That means when you left. When you threw me out, she corrected him, her voice ice cold. When you forced me to sign a paper saying I was nothing. He's mine. Arthur whispered, a mix of horror and sudden greedy fascination dawning in his eyes. He looks exactly like my father. He is my son. Vivian stepped closer, invading his personal space. She was wearing heels that made her almost eye level with him. You signed away your rights. You wanted a clean break. You got it. You have no son. You have a legacy of dust. You can't keep him from me. I'm a Sterling. We don't lose family. You didn't lose family, Arthur. You discarded it. Suddenly, Beatrice appeared, clutching Arthur's arm, her nails digging into his suit jacket. She looked at Vivian with pure hatred. You little scam artist, Beatrice hissed. You think you can waltz in here with some rented child and embarrass us? I'll have security throw you out. Vivian laughed. It was a dark, rich sound. Throw me out. Vivian gestured to the room. Beatrice, look around. I'm the platinum donor. I own the mortgage on this building. I bought the debt of Sterling Industries' subsidiary in Hong Kong this morning. Technically, Vivian leaned in, whispering into Beatrice's ear. Technically, I'm your landlord. So be careful or I'll evict you before the dessert course. The orchestra began to play a soft waltz, something classical and unthreatening masking the violence of the conversation that had just taken place. Vivian stepped away from Arthur and Beatrice, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She kept her face impassive, a marble mask of indifference, but inside she was vibrating with rage. She needed to find Noah. She spotted him near the dessert table. He was laughing at something Dominic was doing. Dominic had balanced a spoon on his nose to entertain the boy. It was a domestic sweet scene that looked completely out of place in the Shark Tank of the Sterling Gala. But as Vivian moved toward them, she saw Arthur move first. Arthur didn't go to the bar. He didn't go to his board members. He walked straight toward Noah. He moved with the focused, predatory gait of a man who sees something he wants to acquire. Vivian picked up her pace, her red dress swishing violently around her legs. "Dominic," she said sharply into the small microphone, hidden in her diamond earring. "Intercept! Now!" Dominic looked up, saw Arthur approaching, and immediately stepped between the man and the boy. Dominic was tall, broad-shouldered, and had the relaxed confidence of a man who had built his own fortune rather than inheriting it. "Arthur," Dominic said, his voice cheerful, but his eyes hard. Lovely party. The shrimp is a bit rubbery, though. Budget cuts. Arthur tried to step around him. Move, Reed. I want to say hello to the boy. He's eating, Dominic said, not moving an inch. And he doesn't talk to strangers. I'm hardly a stranger. Arthur snapped, his voice rising enough to turn heads. I'm his father. Noah looked up, chocolate smeared on the corner of his mouth. He looked at the tall man in the tuxedo, the man who looked so much like him. Noah was young, but he was perceptive. He saw the way this man looked at him. It wasn't the way Dominic looked at him with warmth, or the way his mother looked at him with love. This man looked at him like he was a shiny new watch. You're not my dad, Noah said clearly. Arthur recoiled as if slapped. Excuse me, my dad is busy, Noah said, reciting the line Vivian had taught him years ago for when kids at school asked. He's lost. Vivian arrived at that moment, placing a protective hand on Noah's shoulder. She felt the small body tense up, and she squeezed him gently. Is there a problem here, Arthur? Arthur looked at Vivian, his eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and awe. He has my eyes, Viv. You can't hide that. You can change your name, you can dye your hair, you can become a billionaire, but you can't change biology. Biology is an accident, Vivian hissed, leaning in so only he could hear. Parenthood is a choice. You chose Beatrice. You chose the prenup. You chose to erase us. I didn't know, Arthur shouted. The room went silent. The orchestra stopped. I didn't know, Arthur repeated, quieter now, aware of the 100 eyes on them. If I had known you were carrying a sterling heir. Do you think I would have let you walk out into the rain? Do you think I am that stupid? I think, Vivian said, her voice carrying through the silent ballroom, that you are exactly that, calculating. You would have taken him. You would have given him to nannies and boarding schools. You would have turned him into you. From across the room, Beatrice was watching. She held her martini glass so tightly the stem snapped. Gin and olives spilled over her silver dress, but she didn't notice. She was watching her husband look at that child. She saw the obsession in Arthur's face. For 5 years, Beatrice had failed to give him a child. She had endured the hormone shots, the doctors, the silent disappointment at the dinner table. And now the mouse had returned with a ready-made heir. Beatrice knew her time was up, unless she did something drastic. She marched across the room, her heels clicking like gunshots on the parquet floor. She grabbed Arthur's arm. He's lying! Beatrice screeched, her carefully curated accent slipping into something more shrill. Arthur, look at her. It's a trick. She probably adopted some orphan who looks like you, just to get a payout. Demand a DNA test right now. Vivian turned her gaze to Beatrice. It was a look of pure pity. Oh, Beatrice, you really don't do your research, do you? You think I need a payout? My company Etheria just acquired the bank that holds the loan on your husband's precious stadium project. I don't need your money. I could buy and sell you both before breakfast. Vivian turned to the crowd, addressing the room at large. In fact, that's why I'm here. I'm not here for the gala. I'm here to call in the debt. Gasps ripple through the room. What? Arthur went pale. You can't. The term is 5 years. The term was 5 years, Vivian corrected, pulling a folded document from her clutch. But there's a clause. The morality clause. If the Sterling CEO is found to be engaged in unethical behavior that damages the lender's reputation, the debt can be called immediately. I haven't done anything unethical, Arthur protested. Haven't you? Vivian raised an eyebrow. What about the falsified environmental reports for the new factory in Jersey? Or the bribes paid to the zoning commissioner? Arthur froze. How? How do you have that? I have eyes everywhere, Arthur. I spent 5 years building a tech empire that specializes in data analysis. I know everything. She dropped the document at his feet. You have 24 hours to pay back the loan, or the Sterling Empire belongs to Etheria. And by extension, to me. Arthur looked at the paper, then at Viviane, and finally at the boy. He realized he was checkmated. He was facing financial ruin. But Arthur was a survivor. His mind raced. If he lost the company, he was nothing. But if he had the boy, if he had the heir, the board might back him. They loved a dynasty. Arthur straightened his jacket. He looked at the crowd. He put on his CEO smile. Ladies and gentlemen, Arthur bellowed, his voice booming. Please, a misunderstanding. My ex-wife, she enjoys the theatrics. But let's focus on the real news tonight. He gestured wildly toward Noah. Tonight I am proud to announce that the Sterling legacy is secure regardless of business disputes. Family comes first. I would like to introduce you all to my son, Noah Sterling. Vivian's eyes widened. He was trying to claim him publicly. He was trying to force the narrative to use Noah as a human shield against the hostile takeover. Arthur reached out and grabbed Noah's arm, pulling the boy toward him roughly. Come here, son. Smile for the cameras. No, Noah yelled, pulling back. Let go. You're hurting me. Arthur let him go. Viviane stepped forward, her hands clenching into fists. He is my son, Arthur roared, losing his composure completely. He belongs here with me. Let him go. The voice didn't come from Viviane. It came from the entrance of the ballroom. 2 uniformed NYPD officers and a man in a sharp grey suit walked in. The man in the suit was holding a folder. Arthur Sterling, the man asked. Arthur held on to Noah's arm, panting. Who are you? I'm Detective Miller, the man said. And we're not here about your debt. We're here about the disappearance of a journalist 5 years ago, a Miss Sarah Jenkins. She was investigating your offshore accounts before she vanished. The room went dead silent. Viviane stepped forward and gently pried Arthur's fingers off her son's arm. Arthur was so shocked by the police presence, he didn't resist. Viviane pulled Noah behind her, wrapping him in the crimson fabric of her dress. I told you, Arthur, Viviane whispered, her voice trembling with suppressed adrenaline. I know everything. You... Arthur stared at her, the color draining from his face as the officers approached him. You set this up. I didn't set it up, Viviane said. I just stopped covering for you. As the police moved to handcuff Arthur Sterling in the middle of his own gala, Beatrice screamed a raw, animalistic sound. But she wasn't looking at her husband. She was looking at Viviane. And in Beatrice's eyes, Viviane saw something terrifying. Arthur was defeated. But Beatrice had just lost everything, her status, her money, her husband. She had nothing left to lose. And a woman with nothing to lose is the most dangerous creature on earth. As they led Arthur away, Beatrice vanished into the crowd. Viviane picked up Noah. It's okay, baby. It's over. Mummy, Noah whispered, burying his face in her neck. That lady, the one in the silver dress, what about her? She took my dinosaur toy, Noah said, sniffling. And she said she was going to break it. Viviane looked at the empty spot where Beatrice had stood. A chill went down her spine. The business battle was won, but the war for her family had just begun. The flashing lights of the police cruisers faded into the distance as the black Koenigsegg sped away from the Hamptons, tearing down the highway back toward the city. The rain had returned harder now, drumming against the roof like thousands of nervous fingers. Inside the car, the silence was thick. Noah was asleep across the back seat, his head resting on Vivian's lap. He was still clutching his empty hand where his toy dinosaur used to be. "You did it," Dominic said from the driver's seat. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his eyes checking the rear-view mirror every few seconds. "Arthur is in custody. The Sterling board is already calling my phone. They want to capitulate. You won, Viv." Vivian looked down at her son's sleeping face illuminated by the passing streetlights. "I don't feel like I won, Dom." "Did you see her eyes?" "Beatrice," Dominic scoffed. "She's finished. Her husband is going to prison for fraud. Her assets are frozen, and her father, the senator, just issued a statement distancing himself from the Sterling scandal. She's a pariah." "That's what scares me," Vivian whispered. "A woman like Beatrice defines herself by who sees her. If she's invisible, she'll do anything to be seen again." Vivian's phone buzzed. It was a blocked number. She hesitated, then answered, putting it on speaker. "Hello. Did you enjoy the applause, Vivian?" The voice was Beatrice's, but it sounded wrong. It wasn't the shrill, haughty tone from the gala. It was calm, slurred, like she had taken a handful of sedatives and washed them down with vodka. "Beatrice," Vivian said, her hand instinctively covering Noah's ear. "It's over. Turn yourself in. The police are looking for you as an accomplice." "Accomplice?" Beatrice laughed, a wet, cracking sound. "I wasn't his accomplice. I was his victim, just like you. He used me for my father's connections. He used you for your... whatever it is you do. Quiet obedience." "Where are you, Beatrice?" Dominic asked sharply. "I'm close," she crooned. "I'm watching you drive. You're in the fast lane. You're going 75 miles per hour." Dominic swerved the car, scanning the dark highway behind them. There were headlights everywhere. It was impossible to tell which ones belonged to her. "What do you want?" Vivian demanded. "I want what you stole from me," Beatrice hissed, the calm veneer cracking. 5 years I gave him, 5 years I starved myself to fit into those dresses. I took the hormones to give him a baby. And you walk in with that mongrel child and take everything. Don't you dare talk about my son." Vivian's voice dropped an octave, turning into a growl. "He's not a son," Beatrice spat. "He's a bargaining chip, and I'm going to cash him in." The line went dead. "Dom, drive," Vivian shouted. "Drive faster. The safe house. Tribeca, New York City." Dominic's penthouse was a fortress. Private elevator, reinforced steel doors, bulletproof glass. It was supposed to be impenetrable. They arrived at 2:00 a.m. Vivian carried a sleeping Noah into the guest bedroom, tucking him under the heavy duvet. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just watching his chest rise and fall, checking the locks on the window 3 times. When she walked out into the living room, Dominic was pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. He had a gun on the table next to his laptop. "Security team is deployed in the lobby and the hallway," Dominic said, handing her a glass. "Viv, she can't get in here. You need to breathe." Vivian took the whiskey but didn't drink. She paced the room. "She said she was watching us. How did she know our speed? How did she know which lane we were in? She was probably bluffing, or following us for a bit." "No." Vivian stopped. She looked at the pile of Noah's clothes she had thrown on the armchair, specifically his little tuxedo jacket. "Noah said she took his dinosaur toy," Vivian murmured. And then she gave it back, or she just took it. He said she took it. What if she put something in his pocket? Vivian ran to the jacket. She frantically patted the pockets. Empty. She checked the lining. She checked the cuffs. Then she felt it. A small, hard lump sewn into the hem of the jacket. It wasn't a tracker. It was too small. She ripped the fabric with her teeth. It was a tiny silver AirTag. Vivian looked up at Dominic, horror washing over her face. She didn't follow us. She tracked us. She knows we're here. Click. The lights in the penthouse went out. The entire building powered down. The hum of the refrigerator, the air conditioning, the city glow, everything vanished into pitch blackness. The backup generator should have kicked in, Dominic whispered, grabbing the gun. She cut the hard line. She's here, Vivian breathed. Stay with Noah, Dominic commanded. Lock the bedroom door. Don't open it unless you hear my voice. Vivian ran back into the bedroom, slamming the door and twisting the lock. She dragged a heavy dresser in front of it. In the darkness, she crawled onto the bed and pulled Noah into her arms. He stirred. Mummy, why is it dark? Shh, baby. We're playing a game. The quiet game. Like hide and seek. Outside in the living room, there was a sound. Not a crash, but a soft beep. The sound of the electronic lock on the front door being overridden. Vivian's heart stopped. Beatrice didn't just have madness. She had Arthur's security codes. She had the master keys to the digital kingdom. She heard the front door hiss open. Vivian! Beatrice's voice floated through the apartment, sing-song and terrifying. Come out, come out. I brought a present for the boy. There was a scuffle, a heavy thud, the sound of glass breaking. Dom, Vivian whispered. No answer. Dominic. He's sleeping. Honey, Beatrice called out. I tased him. Nasty little device. Arthur bought it for me for self-defense. Isn't that ironic? Vivian looked around the dark room. She had no weapon. She was a CEO, a mother, not a soldier. But as she looked at Noah, something primal snapped into place. She wasn't the forgotten wife anymore. She was the matriarch. She scanned the room. A heavy bronze lamp, a letter opener on the side table. She grabbed the letter opener. The doorknob to the bedroom rattled. I know you're in there, Beatrice cooed. She kicked the door. Thud. Open up, Viv. Let's negotiate. You give me the boy, and I give you your life. You want him? Vivian yelled, her voice steady, surprisingly loud. Come and get him. She moved Noah into the closet. Stay here. Put your hands over your ears. Count to 100. Do not stop counting. Mummy, count. Vivian stood in the center of the room facing the door. She gripped the letter opener until her palm bled. The lock clicked. The door creaked open, pushing against the dresser. A figure slipped through the gap. Beatrice. She was a wreck. Her silver dress was torn, her makeup smeared like a clown's, her blonde hair matted with rain. In her hand, she held a canister of gasoline and a lighter. I decided I don't want the money. Beatrice smiled, her teeth showing in the moonlight. If I can't have the Sterling legacy, I'm going to burn it down. She flicked the lighter. A small flame danced in the dark. Beatrice, don't, Vivian said, stepping forward. You'll die too. I'm already dead, Beatrice whispered. I died the day he looked at me and wished I was you. Beatrice raised the gasoline canister, preparing to splash it across the room. Vivian didn't hesitate. She didn't think. She lunged as Beatrice pulled her arm back to throw the gas. Viviane tackled her. They crashed onto the floor. The lighter flew from Beatrice's hand, skidding across the carpet, the flame still lit. The gasoline splashed over both of them. The fumes were overpowering, instant and choking. "I'll kill us both!" Beatrice screamed, clawing at Viviane's face. Her nails dug into Viviane's cheek, drawing blood. Viviane ignored the pain. She slammed Beatrice's wrist against the floor, forcing her to drop the canister. But Beatrice was fueled by hysterical strength. She rolled Viviane over, pinning her, her hands wrapping around Viviane's throat. "You took him!" Beatrice shrieked, squeezing. "You took my life!" Viviane gasped for air, black spots dancing in her vision. She flailed her hand out, searching for a weapon for anything. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal of the lighter. It was still burning dangerously close to the puddle of gasoline spreading toward the curtains. If the flame touched the gas, the whole room would explode. Viviane looked into Beatrice's eyes. There was no humanity left there, only a void. Viviane made a choice. She bucked her hips, throwing Beatrice off balance for a split second. She smashed the heavy brass base of the lamp into the side of Beatrice's head. Beatrice crumbled, falling sideways. Viviane scrambled up, coughing, covered in gas. She grabbed the lighter just as the flame licked the edge of the fuel puddle. She snapped it shut. Darkness returned. Silence. Viviane stood there, panting, trembling. Beatrice lay motionless on the floor. "Mommy." A small voice came from the closet. "I counted to 20. Viviane rushed to the closet, ripping the door open and scooping Noah up. She didn't care about the gas on her clothes. She just needed to hold him. "You did good, baby. You did so good." Suddenly the lights flickered back on. Dominic stood in the doorway, holding his head, swaying slightly. He looked at the unconscious Beatrice, the spilled gasoline, and Viviane clutching her son. "My God," Dominic breathed. "Viv, are you okay?" Viviane looked at Beatrice's body. Then she looked at the window where the rain was still falling. "Call the police," Viviane said, her voice devoid of emotion. "And call my lawyer. I want her buried under the jail." She walked out of the room, carrying her son. She didn't look back. But as she walked down the hallway, she realized something. The nightmare wasn't over. Because Beatrice's phone, lying on the floor next to her unconscious body, lit up with a text message. Dominic picked it up. He read it, and his blood ran cold. The text was from a number labeled Senator Montgomery. It read, "Fail tonight, and you don't just lose the money. You lose the protection. Finish the job, Beatrice, or I will." Dominic looked at Viviane's retreating back. The crazy ex-wife was just the pawn. The king had just entered the game. The next morning, a private airstrip in Teterboro, New Jersey. The sun rose over the tarmac, bleaching the sky a sickly white. Viviane stood next to the sleek silver fuselage of her private jet. But she wasn't boarding. She was waiting. Dominic paced beside her phone, pressed to his ear. "The senator is blocking the flight plan, Viv. He's grounded us." He knows we found the text on Beatrice's phone. Viviane adjusted her sunglasses, hiding the bruise on her cheek from the night before. "Of course he did. He can't let us leave. If I take Noah to Europe, he loses his leverage. We need to go to the FBI," Dominic urged. Beatrice was just the unstable pawn. Senator Montgomery is the player. He used Sterling Industries to launder cartel money through those offshore stadium projects. That's why he needed Arthur to marry Beatrice to keep the money in the family. That's why they needed the zoning permits. If we go to the FBI now, it's our word against a sitting US. Senator Vivian said calmly. He'll bury the evidence before we even fill out the paperwork. No. We have to make him confess. Confess, Viv, the man is a shark. He doesn't confess. He eats people. Every shark has to come up for air, Vivian said. She checked her watch. And I just threw Chum in the water. A black Lincoln Navigator rolled onto the tarmac, flanked by 2 police motorcycles. The police weren't there to arrest the senator. They were his personal escort. Senator Montgomery stepped out. He was a man of 60 with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked like a grandfather, but he moved like a mob boss. He walked straight up to Vivian, ignoring Dominic completely. Ms. Cross, the senator, said, his voice smooth as velvet. I apologize for the delay. National security check. Routine. Cut the act, Senator Vivian said. Beatrice is in a psych ward under police guard. She's talking. Beatrice is a disturbed woman. Montgomery sighed, shaking his head theatrically. Whatever she says is the rambling of a lunatic. No one will believe her, especially when the press finds out about your past. He signaled to one of his aides who held up a tablet. On the screen was a dossier. Vivian Cross, history of mental instability, allegations of corporate espionage, rumors of child endangerment. I can have Child Protective Services take that boy away from you by lunchtime, Montgomery said softly. I have judges in my pocket who owe me favors. I have the press ready to print that you are an unfit mother who endangered her child in a fire she started herself. Vivian felt the blood drain from her face. It was the one threat that could paralyze her. They could take Noah. What do you want? She asked, her voice tight. I want the data, Montgomery said, stepping closer. The files Etheria scraped from the Sterling servers. And I want you to sign over your majority shares in the new merger to a trust I control. You walk away with the boy, and you disappear again, just like you did 5 years ago. And if I refuse, then Noah goes into the system, and you go to federal prison for corporate sabotage. Dominic stepped forward, his hand moving toward his jacket, but Vivian put a hand on his chest to stop him. She looked at the senator. She looked defeated, shoulders slumped, head down. You win, Vivian whispered. I just want my son. The senator smiled a predatory grin of triumph. Smart girl. The files, now. Vivian reached into her purse. She pulled out a small encrypted hard drive. She held it out. The senator reached for it. One thing Vivian said, pulling it back slightly. Did you order Beatrice to burn the house down? Beatrice lacks imagination. The senator scoffed, his ego getting the better of him. I told her to solve the problem. I didn't care how. If she had to burn the city down to protect my investment, so be it. That money funds my re-election. It funds the future. A few casualties, even a child, are the cost of doing business. Vivian stared at him. You admit you were willing to let my son die? I admit I do what is necessary. Montgomery snapped, snatching the drive from her hand. Now get on your plane and get out of my country. Vivian didn't move. She just smiled, and for the first time the senator felt a flicker of fear. What he demanded. Vivian tapped the pearl brooch on her lapel. Did you get that? Julian? The senator spun around. From the back of Vivian's private jet, the door opened. But it wasn't a pilot who stepped out. It was Julian, the lead reporter from Vanity Fair, holding a professional-grade camera. Behind him was a cameraman from CNN. And behind them, the regional director of the FBI. "We got it live," Ms. Cross Julian shouted, his voice echoing across the tarmac. "Streamed to 4 million viewers." The senator froze. He looked at the hard drive in his hand. "That's not the data," Viviane said, her voice ringing with steel. "That's a decoy. The real data was sent to the Department of Justice 10 minutes ago. But we needed the confession on tape to make it stick. We needed the world to see who you really are." Sirens wailed in the distance. Real sirens this time. Not the senator's escort. The feds. Montgomery looked at his security detail, but they were already backing away, hands raised. No one protects a man who just confessed to attempted child murder on a global live stream. "You," Montgomery snarled, lunging at Viviane. Dominic didn't hesitate this time. He stepped in a clean right hook that connected squarely with the senator's jaw. The old man crumpled to the tarmac. As the FBI agents swarmed the runway, handcuffing the senator and reading him his rights, Viviane walked over to where he lay. "You forgot the first rule of politics, Senator," she said, looking down at him. "Never underestimate the woman you tried to silence. She has nothing to lose and everything to burn." 6 months later. Central Park, New York City. The city had finally exhaled. After the suffocating heat of a scandalous summer, New York had turned into a masterpiece of burnt orange gold and crisp, biting air. It was late October, the time of year when the light hits the skyscrapers at a slant, making the steel look like gold bullion, and the shadows stretch long across the pavement. Viviane Cross sat on a wrought-iron bench near the Heckscher playground, a cup of steaming coffee warming her gloved hands. She wasn't wearing the armor of the CEO today. There was no crimson gown, no diamond earrings that doubled as recording devices, no dangerously high heels intended to intimidate board members. She wore a soft, oversized camel coat made of cashmere, a thick scarf wrapped around her neck, and flat leather boots. For the first time in 5 years, she didn't feel the need to check the exits. She didn't feel the phantom weight of eyes watching her back. She watched the playground. 50 yards away, Noah was conquering a plastic castle. He was bundled in a blue puffer jacket, his cheeks flushed pink from the cold and the exertion. He was shouting orders to a small platoon of other children, organizing a game of tag with the seriousness of a military operation. He had his mother's resilience, but he had the sterling charisma, the ability to draw people into his orbit without even trying. Viviane smiled, but it was a quiet, private thing. She touched her cheek. The scratch from Beatrice's nails had healed months ago, leaving no scar, but the memory of that night in the safe house was still there, a reminder of how close the fire had come to consuming them all. "He's taller," a voice said. The sound didn't startle her, though perhaps it should have. It was a voice she had once known better than her own heartbeat. A voice that had once commanded boardrooms, destroyed careers, and whispered false promises in the dark. Now, however, it sounded hollow, scraped out. Viviane didn't turn immediately. She took a slow sip of her coffee, letting the silence stretch, forcing him to stand in the cold a moment longer. Then she shifted her gaze. Arthur Sterling was standing at the edge of the path. If the paparazzi had been there, they wouldn't have recognized him. The Arthur Sterling of old, was a Titan bespoke Italian suit's hair gelled to perfection, a posture that screamed entitlement. The man standing before her now was a ghost. He was wearing a generic grey tracksuit and a beanie pulled low over his forehead. He had lost weight, his face gaunt, the sharp jawline now hidden under a rough, unkempt beard that was more grey than brown. He looked like a man who had not only lost his kingdom, but had been exiled from reality itself. "He's 4, Arthur," Viviane said, her voice steady. "They grow fast, especially when they aren't being hidden away." Arthur flinched. He took a step closer, but stopped when he saw Viviane's posture stiffen. He remained at a respectful distance, hands shoved deep into his pockets. "I read the financial reports in the journal this morning," Arthur said, his breath pluming in the cold air. "The acquisition is complete. Etheria has officially absorbed the last of the Sterling assets. The brand, the name, it's gone." "We kept the charitable foundation," Viviane corrected him gently, "but we renamed it the New Horizons Fund. It focuses on single mothers and early childhood education. I thought that was appropriate." Arthur let out a short, dry laugh that sounded painful. "Appropriate? Yes. You erased me, Viv. Completely." "I didn't erase you, Arthur," she said, finally turning on the bench to look him full in the face. "You erased yourself. Every choice you made, the prenup, the affairs, the fraud, the senator, that was you writing your own ending. I just turned the page." Arthur looked down at his sneakers. They were scuffed. The old Arthur would have fired an assistant for bringing him scuffed shoes. "I'm going away, Viv. The sentencing hearing is on Tuesday." Viviane nodded. She knew. Her lawyers had kept her informed of every motion, every failed plea deal. "How long? The district attorney is pushing for maximums. My lawyer says if I plead to the racketeering charges and give up the rest of Montgomery's network, maybe 8 years, maybe 10. He looked up and his eyes were rimmed with red. 10 years, Viviane. I'll be 50 when I get out. I'll be an old man with nothing." "You won't have nothing," Viviane said, not out of cruelty, but out of fact. "You'll have a clean slate, which is more than you gave me when you threw me out in the rain." Arthur winced as if she had struck him. He looked past her toward the playground. He watched Noah running his laughter carrying on the wind like a bell. He watched the boy tumble into a pile of leaves and immediately scramble back up, grinning. "Does he know?" Arthur asked, his voice cracking. "Does he know who I am?" "He knows his father is gone," Viviane said. "He knows his father made mistakes. That's all he needs to know right now." Arthur swallowed hard, the Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. He took a step forward, a sudden desperation seizing him. "Viviane, can I say hello? Just for a minute. I won't tell him who I am. I just want to. I want to look him in the eye. I want to shake his hand. Please. He's the only thing I have left in this world that is real." Viviane looked at him. She saw the pain in his eyes. She saw the regret that was eating him alive, far more effective than any prison cell. For a brief second, she felt a pang of pity. It would be easy to say yes. It would be the saintly thing to do. But then she looked at Noah. She saw Dominic Reed entering the playground gate. Dominic, who had sat up with Noah when he had the flu. Dominic, who had taught him to tie his shoes. Dominic, who looked at Noah not as an heir to a legacy, but as a little boy who loved dinosaurs and chocolate ice cream. She saw Dominic scoop Noah up, tossing him into the air. Noah shrieked with delight, wrapping his small arms around Dominic's neck. Viviane turned back to Arthur. Her expression was not angry, but it was final. "No, Arthur." Arthur slumped. "Why?" "Just 1 minute." "Because he is happy," Viviane said softly. "He is whole. He doesn't have a hole in his heart where a father should be, because Dominic filled it. If I let you walk over there, I introduce confusion. I introduce a ghost into his life. I won't do that to him. I won't let you use him to make yourself feel better about your failures." Arthur opened his mouth to argue, but closed it. He looked at Dominic and Noah one last time. He saw the easy affection, the safety, the love. It was a tableau of a life he could have had if he hadn't been so obsessed with power. "He's a good man," Arthur whispered. "Reed, he's better at this than I would have been." "Yes," Viviane said. "He is." Arthur nodded slowly. Tears spilled over his lashes, tracking through the grime on his face. He wiped them away with the back of a rough hand. "You were right, you know," Arthur said, his voice barely audible. "That night at the gala, you said I would have turned him into me. I would have. I would have made him cold. I would have made him a Sterling." He looked at Viviane with a strange, broken reverence. "Thank you for saving him from me." Viviane felt a tightness in her chest loosen. That was the admission she hadn't realized she needed. "Goodbye, Arthur." He stood there for a moment longer, etching the image of his son into his memory, to sustain him through the long, dark decade ahead in a concrete cell. Then he turned. He walked away down the leaf-strewn path. He didn't look back. He walked past the families, past the joggers, past the tourists. His grey tracksuit blended into the grey pavement and then into the shadows of the trees. He became smaller and smaller until he was just a speck. And then he was gone. Viviane sat alone on the bench for a long minute, listening to the wind rustle the drying leaves. The ghost was gone. The monster was gone. "Viv." She looked up. Dominic was standing at the playground gate, holding Noah's hand. Noah was waving a pretzel stick like a conductor's baton. "Mummy, look, Uncle Dom bought me a pretzel. A giant one." Viviane stood up. She smoothed her coat. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the clean, cold air of the city she now owned. She walked toward them. Not as a victim, not as an avenger, but as a woman who had walked through the fire and carried her joy out in her arms. Dominic reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm, solid, and real. "Is everything okay?" Dominic asked, noticing her staring down the path where Arthur had vanished. "You look different." Viviane looked at him, then down at Noah, who was currently trying to feed a piece of pretzel to a skeptical pigeon. "I'm fine." Viviane smiled, and for the first time in years the smile reached her eyes, bright and unburdened. "Actually, I'm better than fine. We have a photo shoot tomorrow, don't we?" "We do." Dominic laughed. "Forbes, the woman who broke the glass ceiling." "Let's change the headline," Viviane said, grabbing Noah's other hand so they were swinging him between them as they walked out of the park, stepping into the golden afternoon light. "What do you want it to say?" Viviane looked at the skyline rising tall and proud before them. The mother who won. And that is the story of Vivian Cross, a woman who turned her pain into power and burned a dynasty to the ground to save her son. It's a reminder that the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one shouting. It's the one listening, waiting for their moment to strike. What do you think? Did Arthur deserve a chance to say goodbye, or was Viviane right to protect Noah? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of revenge and redemption, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next saga. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.